Well, welcome to Eat, Theatre, Sleep, Repeat with Ged Mills and Hayley Kay. And once again, another edition. And we think this is going to be another fascinating edition.
Absolutely. Now, our first guest on the podcast today is part of what can only be described as a phenomenon. He is a puppeteer and has worked on some of the biggest shows in the country. So it's our pleasure to welcome Toby Olié to the programme. And we're going to chat about Animal Farm, which is coming to Blackpool's Grand Theatre this year.
Toby, thanks very much for joining us. And yeah, I mean, you as a puppeteer, we want to get straight into it, first of all. Just how did you become a puppeteer? What made you think, yeah, this is the career for me?
I had a very understanding and supportive family to start off with when you come to them and say you want to be a puppeteer. So I'd always watched Sesame Street as a kid when that was on TV in the mornings, and loved films like Jurassic Park that were very kind of special effects heavy, and was always making things out of, you know, cardboard boxes and toilet rolls in a sort of Blue Peter style. And I suppose in school, I always had really encouraging, you know, art and drama teachers who sort of always were encouraging me to sort of cross over the kind of disciplines. And I suppose puppetry for me was the meeting point between kind of art and painting and sculpture and drama and acting. And it sort of, yeah, it sort of fused together in that way. And I, yeah, looked at theatre design courses initially that had kind of puppetry modules when I was looking for somewhere to study at university. And then the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama used to do, it doesn't currently exist anymore, but I'm hoping that it might come back. They did a BA in puppetry for 3 years. So I applied to that course and was accepted. And so did, yeah, 3 years of kind of bits of puppet making, but more kind of performing with puppets and yeah, learning how to puppeteer. And then just before graduating, got involved in a development workshop for, you know, a show that was a new show that was in development that had a horse at the center of it, that was called War Horse, a book that I hadn't read that I had to find, and you know, and that just sort of, yeah, paved the way for a lot more puppetry to follow it.
I mean, I was going to ask about your big break, but wow, War Horse. I don't think anyone, I certainly, when I went, I knew it was going to be good. I'd heard really good things, but I think to sit in the theatre and actually watch the show is stunning. I mean, talk us through sort of, I mean, it sounds like you were there from the get-go.
Yeah, so I did. So the National Theatre, where the show started, has a sort of development studio, which is an amazing, amazing facility where shows that haven't even been commissioned yet can have either script readings or kind of development workshops with actors where a script can be worked on. And with War Horse, there was a draft of the script, but we basically did sort of puppetry development workshops with a prototype horse that was made by Handspring Puppet Company in South Africa. And I was one of 3 performers who were sort of cast to be the sort of human guinea pig, like the crash test dummies in this horse puppet, to see the ergonomics of it. And could we carry a rider, and could we make it walk and gallop? Could we do slow-mo? All of the things you see in the show. We basically spent, I think it was 4 weeks to start off with in summer 2006, 4 weeks kind of road testing this puppet. And then in between that summer and the following spring, Handspring then went back to South Africa and made the set of puppets for the show that we would then use. And then in March, yeah, the following year, we did another workshop where we basically staged the show very roughly with all these puppets. And then by the summer after that, so summer 2007, the show was programmed and we started rehearsals. And, you know, none of us knew if it was going to work. You know, that was what was exciting, was it felt like a risk to have a puppet playing the central part. And for an audience, you know, that show's only going to work if an audience believes and cares about that horse. And thankfully they did.
Yeah, but did you, when you watched, did you get it filmed and then you watched it back, and did you think, was there that, like I said, I know you said we didn't know where the audience take it, but just you maybe being a biased puppeteer, did you think, oh, this is good, this is really good?
I mean, I still remember walking into the room and seeing the sort of prototype puppet hanging up and just thinking, like, that's a life-size horse. It doesn't look like one, but that is a life-size horse. And I think Handspring, their puppets have an amazing use of mechanisms and sort of elastics and sort of bungee in them. So the movements feel really muscular. And I think, you know, when we were even trialing out ideas, seeing people walk into the room and watching this horse move around, it was evident that the puppetry, you know, was impressive and people really appreciated it. I suppose the thing that we weren't sure about was the sort of emotional stakes of that story and the puppet interacting with actors and how that story could work. And I'm really lucky since then to have really found a niche, you know, creating work and directing and designing puppets for shows where puppets share the stage equally with actors. Or in Animal Farm's case, you know, they're the main characters and the humans are sort of secondary to them, really.
I wanted to ask as well, purely from a performance perspective, what's it like for you then? Because for me, when you go and see things like Warhorse or Animal Farm, as an audience member, it takes me, honestly, and this is a bit embarrassing, it takes me seconds to forget about the puppeteers.
Yeah.
Seconds, because at first you're aware that they're people, and you kind of, your brain goes, oh, there's the people, and this is what they're going to show you or pretend to do. And then it begins, and I forget. And then I thought, how strange must it be for a performer or a puppeteer like yourself to sort of, you're not in the limelight, yet you're center stage. I mean, how does that feel or even work?
You definitely, like, people who work in puppetry are definitely the kind of most generous performers I think I kind of work with, either as a fellow puppeteer or as a kind of director. There's a sort of ego, a sort of selflessness about it, because you're all working sometimes together, you know, in groups of 2 or 3 on a kind of puppet character. And I think, you know, it's the simple act of, if I'm, you know, if this cup of tea is my puppet, as long as I look at my puppet, when you look at me, I'm telling you to look at this. And, you know, if this is moving and doing its thing, that's good. As soon as I break focus and either look at you or look at somewhere else, I become a character sort of on the stage, because I independently have focus and have thought. And so, you know, it's a simple act of me looking at this and going, look at this, don't look at me, look at this, don't look at me. That, you know, in the same way that if we were in a room together now talking and I looked over your shoulders and went, I'd like to think you would probably turn. I was very, it's that simple little act that we take for granted, that we're just biologically programmed to have, that yeah, exactly, makes us sort of disappear. And for me, it's quite like, I mean, I don't meditate, but it feels like what I imagine meditating is like, because you forget you're there and you're kind of tuning in physically to other people and to a puppet or the actor that you're opposite. And it does, you really do feel yourself disappear and sort of inhabit this other kind of being, which is, you know, very satisfying.
Is that all part of the training though, Toby? Is that, you know, is that like, what's the thing called when you're inside a like mascot trainer? I can't remember what they call that. You can't speak and stuff like that. And I suppose same with puppetry. Is that all part of the training, and years go by and you think, oh, I looked at the audience there and I shouldn't have done that. Is that just part of training?
I think what's quite exciting is you get into a state of sort of thinking about, obviously your job is acting through a puppet, you know what I mean? You're animating and bringing life to this thing, but you start to sort of think about emotions in terms of rhythm, in terms of like the rhythm of breath rate or how much your eyes would move. Like you sort of slightly break down emotions because you're not showing them yourself. You kind of develop this ability to kind of analyze emotion and break it down into its components and put it into a puppet. And I remember during one show while I was still in Warhorse, the director of Toy Story 3 was watching, and I'd just seen that film that day, and he came backstage. I tweeted him at the interval, and he came backstage and he sort of said, I'm amazed that you can do the things you do with, you know, with just inanimate things in your hand. And I was like, yeah, but your team do it through a computer on a screen, you know, and I think for something like on Animal Farm, we have over, you know, 30 life-size animals. And I think a big part of that with our puppeteers was going, actually, how do those different emotional frequencies work in these animals when they're such different sizes? You know, how is a horse being scared different to a chicken being scared? Things like that. Finding out how that works and that balance on stage has been really important.
I mean, that's what I was going to ask next, was about the ensemble, because that's the big difference here. I mean, when you read Animal Farm, or I certainly did when I was much younger, you know it's a farm. It's a full ensemble of a farm. So how's that been to work with? I mean, how you sort of say you work with a few puppeteers, but I'm guessing in Animal Farm there's a team of you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a team. We're still short-handed, but there's a team. So, well, I mean, in a interesting way. So we knew we had 14 performers. 2 of them would be swings, so they would have roles in the show, but would have to cover other people. And so I sat down with the first draft of the script and thought, right, how many hands do we have per animal? So in this scene, if we've got 3 pigs, the horse and the cow, you know, what number of performers does each animal have? And when I was designing them, that was really helpful and, you know, informed a lot of decisions about what those animals could do, whether the puppeteer's legs would play the legs of the animals. So in our pigs and dogs and goat, their back legs are a puppeteer's back legs, and then the puppeteers themselves lean forward and operate the front legs. So it already, the sort of logistics of how many pairs of hands you have to animate these characters was a big part of it. And I think it is interesting because you find yourself, you know, puppet directing a show with that many characters is exhausting, because first of all, your eyes have to be in so many places in one scene when you've got, you know, 12 characters. And then at the same time, if you make a tiny little adjustment to a piece of action, Of course, you make a bit of adjustment to a horse's action, but there's 3 people who then need to recalibrate and retalk and slightly think about it again. So the tiniest little bit of nuance is obviously the result of a lot of work and focus and attention of the people operating it.
Yeah, and did it start off for you, as we mentioned at the beginning, with the sooty and the sweep, and then obviously it just that gradual sort of, you know, moved up through the world. But how has technology in puppetry, how has it changed from those early days that you remember it to where we are now, and maybe where you think it's going to go in the future?
I think what's interesting is, in terms of what you see on stage, technology hasn't had, well, in terms of the performance of a puppet, sorry, technology for me hasn't had a lot of impact, because actually the few times I've seen shows on stage and they've tried to use more kind of animatronics and things like that, it doesn't work, because for some reason, that kind of effect on stage as opposed to on film just doesn't feel as alive as something more low tech, you know, a bit of cloth that someone's breathing, because you're in a theater and you know you're being asked to, you know, suspend your disbelief. Often the simplest, kind of most effective ways with puppets are the best. In terms of puppet making, there's obviously 3D printing, and you know, being able to draw things on computer software, all that kind of thing is streamlining a kind of making process, the making processes, which is amazing. And I think for the future of puppetry, I keep saying this to people, the thing that I'm sort of excited and sort of worried about is the fact is there is so much puppetry in theatre now that actually, you know, I'm a bit like, are we going to run out of people? You know, puppet makers, puppet directors, people who are then going to assist those people and be the next generation. And so for me, I'm trying to think about how I can generate things for teachers, because puppetry is now on the GCSE and A-level drama syllabus, which it wasn't when I was growing up. So I'm trying to find ways that, you know, people who are puppet nerds like me, how I can draw that out of people if they're doing drama or art, and they can find that as a kind of discipline and a route that they could go down. Because I was fortunate that I, you know, watched Sesame Street and the Lonely Goat Herd bit on The Sound of Music, you know, and was inspired. But I think I'm now trying to think about, how we can draw out those people so that if puppetry keeps going on this stratospheric rise, there's the hands and the minds and creative people there to kind of keep it going.
I mean, one of the things that's always fascinated me when you go and see puppeteers at work is it looks to me very physically demanding. I mean, how do you all look after yourselves? Because, you know, the shows are, you know, they're quite long, and you're in costume, or you're in puppet, or you're whatever. You're in those positions for quite a long amount of time. Again, because you forget there's people in them, don't you? You sort of sat there and you completely forget there's someone in that, not in a natural position.
Yeah, I mean, Animal Farm is 90 minutes straight through. So we made a decision really early on. We didn't want an interval. You know, the book it's short and sharp and pacey and packs a punch. And we thought, well, you know, the show needs to be that. It would sort of take the sort of adrenaline out of it to sit back for 20 minutes in the middle. Not for the performers, obviously, their adrenaline is high. But I think you do, you know, quite often for a puppet to look sort of neutral, you end up either kind of hunched over or to one side. And it's, you know, and there isn't really a gym you can go to sort of get stronger at being a pig's front legs. You know, you only get strong at it by doing it in rehearsals. So I think a big part of it for our 14 strong cast on Animal Farm was sort of going, right, you know, you're going to get the strength, the weird strength to hold this pig's control rod and its trigger by doing it. And then weirdly, the big part of maintenance then is sort of doing like a cool down after the show. So they all plunge their arms into ice buckets, and they all do, you know, a lot of core exercises. So you're not getting into bad habits. I left Warhorse with a slightly forward facing right shoulder. And so all of our Animal Farm gang have a really great sort of post-show routine. But the show for them is non-stop. As soon as they go off stage as one character, they're getting changed, they're coming on as someone else, they're holding a prop for someone else. You know, we have lots of sequences that are chases and fights, or them doing the harvest where there's no text, but it's completely physical, full out kind of, you know, 4 or 5 minute sequences. So they, you know, they're having some serious cardio for an hour and a half while the audience sit in the dark and kind of appreciate it.
And how are audiences reacting to it? Because I guess the sign of a really great puppeteer surely is that they completely are taken in by it. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. You know, you said earlier on, theatre audiences do suspend reality, but there's a bit of you, I think, that just gets taken with it. Yeah,
and I think in when was it? 2007 when Warhorse happened, and you know, shows like Lion King that had come before it. I think when a sort of mainstream, you know, sort of popular theatre show that appeals to a kind of family audience, you know, it was I think people's response was really monumental to going, you know, I watched a puppet for an hour and a half and I cared about a puppet. And excitingly, since then, that's become quite a mainstay, you know, of a lot of theatre. People, you know, when they see a puppet now, they've generally got experience of seeing it before and they've got something to compare it to. And so I think on Animal Farm, what felt exciting was that it's, you know, it is for a slightly maturer audience. You know, you know, we're saying it's 11 and up. And I think there's something really exciting about that it's, you know, it's a show that has 30 life-size animals in it, but that doesn't make it cute and cuddly. You know, we stick to the book. It is bleak, and these pigs take over the farm, and it's exciting to you know, attack some sort of some more kind of deeper, sort of thornier issues, especially at this point in time when you've got, you know, you've got countries invading other countries and people taking over. To be able to kind of unpick and show messages and create conversation about that sort of thing through a show about farm animals taking over their farm is, you know, feels really important.
Well, Toby, it's been great to speak to you. Very best of luck, obviously, with the production, obviously coming to the Grand the 19th to the 23rd of April. So, yeah, really looking forward to seeing it. And, yeah, it's been brilliant speaking to you. So, Toby, thank you very much for joining us on Eat, Theatre, Sleep, Repeat.
Not at all. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Toby Olié there, of course, one of the puppeteers. I mean, it's a fascinating job, isn't it? It really is.
I just feel like with things like Animal Farm, it's a brilliant story, but then to actually be able to tell it with the next best thing to actual animals, I think it's going to be a must see. And I think certainly the sort of show you come out of and you go, I can't believe they were people.
Yeah, well, seamlessly, obviously, as Toby explained there, he started in Warhorse. One of the writers of our next production that we're going to feature, Private Peaceful, the author, of course, wrote Warhorse as well, and joining us now is one of the stars from that show, Rob Ewens. Rob, thank you very much for joining us. Play Big Joe in Private Peaceful. Not a puppeteer, but a physical actor, but just as demanding.
I'm just a talking prop, yeah.
So how's it going? How's the show going so far? Because there's been a big gap, hasn't there? You know, with COVID, with the pandemic, I think people are just, the momentum is built up now and shows are coming back and things finally feel like they're getting back to normal.
Yeah, it's been absolutely wonderful. I'm very lucky because it's taken 3 years for the rest of the cast to actually get this show on the road. And I'm just along for the ride, really. I've been very lucky to be involved with such a great company and show. It's wonderful, yeah.
I've been reading some of the notes about the show. It sounds a fantastic show, this. Just tell people that don't really know much about it. What's it all about?
So it's about two brothers and their life and how something massive happens along the way, changes the whole aspect of their life, and it's it's just a wonderful story about brothers, love, and how people deal with changes. Really, it's just and community and family. It's a lovely story, and I'm just grateful to be involved with it.
I was going to ask about the audience's reaction, because obviously, you know, it's a story about brothers, but it's also a love story. It's a story about conflict. It feels like it's got so much to offer. And like you say, it's for adults and it's for children. So what's their reaction been like?
Oh, we've had some funny reactions, but they've at the start you're thinking, because you hear the noise backstage of everyone talking and the screaming and shouting, but then the minute it starts like that, they're focused, they're glued to the show the whole way through, and they're fully engaged. It's amazing, especially when it's a time that isn't with social media, with any kind of tech that you'd think the kids would be wanting to be involved with. It's very bare bones at that point where it comes to that kind of thing, and it's I've just been blown away by how interested they've been.
Well, one thing I wanted to ask, Rob, was obviously this is all about bringing literature to the theatre and how books can then be made into plays. We talked to Toby before about Animal Farm, obviously, well-renowned books, isn't it? A famous book, and same with this one. I think the writer of this book obviously did Warhorse and said, but this is his favourite story. Do you like this kind of thing? Do you read the book before, or do you just want to get the script and trying to take it your own way?
Yeah, I go my own way because I think I'd fixate on the book, and especially if they go a different way with the screenplay of it, I would probably have the book in my head. So I've tried to keep it as close to the text, but trying to find my own way in it as well. But I've loved playing Big Joe because he's such a lovely character. And it's just,
I was going to ask, what's it like, Big Joe?
He sounds great.
He sounds like a great guy, and being part of a set of brothers, who are then kind of like the main part of the story. What's Big Joe like?
Big. I think he's a bit like a puppy in the way, like, just a big puppy. That's how I've been playing him, really. He's very sweet. I think he's very focused on his family, and he loves them dearly. He just loves his family. He loves to have fun, and he loves to spend time with his brothers and mess around, and he can sometimes get people into trouble. He's just loyal and loving. He's just sweet. But he's kind of weird because the disability that he has is exactly the same as the one I have. It's really bizarre. I had meningitis as a baby. Exactly.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to bring up, because you describe yourself as an actor with a disability, not a disabled actor. Tell us, that is obviously a strong quote from you.
Yeah, it's just I just feel like it's something that is a part of me. It's not the whole of me. I'm more than just my disability, and it's lovely because I do play other characters in the show that are able-bodied as well. So it's nice to have that freedom to play someone without being labelled or have stigma or anything like that. It's been just been wonderful, and to be honest, it's something I'd love to do more of. I love the roles that I get, but I feel like it'd be quite interesting to do more. And I got asked before about if I see myself as a disabled actor, and I said if I was a builder, I wouldn't be classed as a disabled builder. I'd just be a builder.
Yeah, true. Is that a frustration for you in this industry, that there always has to be a label at some point in actors, actresses? There has to be a label, and does that frustrate you?
It's kind of a catch-22 because I love doing the work. It's what I get up to do. It's just wonderful. But yeah, it's work. But I just feel like it's, how can I put it? So I appreciate the work, because around about 20 years before, no one with disabilities would have been on stage or TV, or it wouldn't be taken as seriously as it is now. So there's that gratefulness of that we're moving. We're not moving as fast as we'd like to move, but I'm grateful that we are moving instead of standing still and not being acknowledged. So I'm looking for silver linings in everything when it comes to stuff like that.
I think it's just inspiring, though, isn't it? It's just to show that we've moved on in 20 years, not as quickly as you want to, obviously, but that you're up there and representing. I think that's the thing, and it's quite right what you say. It's a secondary thing. It's something about you, but not all of you, as you said.
Yes. So. Am I right in thinking as well, Rob, that you do lots of workshops and classes?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I used to do workshops. I used to work with a brilliant company called Mind the Gap, and we used to do some workshops and also with some other companies as well. And yeah, I used to do drama training before I got into acting, and that's what kind of got me into it, because I just love doing it. It was the thing that I was looking forward to doing all the time, and it's. I usually worked with vulnerable adults with disabilities or children, and they love it. It just brings out another side to people, and you could tell that they enjoyed it as much as we did teaching it. And it's some of the things, it just brought out their true colours. And now I know people that are doing it now. They're still getting involved with the arts, and it's wonderful, because sometimes you might not be able to vocally express something, but you could do it with a movement or an emotion, like showing it with your face, and it just opens up doors for people. It's been wonderful, yeah.
You can tell that you're so passionate about what you do, but what's next for you? Because obviously you've been performing in Private Peaceful, but what's sort of next? Is it back to workshops? Is it, what's next on the agenda for you?
I don't know yet, actually. So I'm just, I'm just waiting right now. So I'll just be sitting by the phone. No, I won't know. But, no, hopefully. I'll be getting back into some work, or just having a break, because it's a very long tour. It's going till July, so I probably might just sleep.
Wow.
To be honest.
Yeah, well, great, Rob. Listen, it's been fantastic having you on. Private Peaceful coming to the Grand Theatre 2nd to the 7th of May, and it sounds a great story. This, it really does. And like I say, Rob, literally trying not to give anything away. That's how twists and turns are in this show. But do read it. About, maybe if you've read the book, you'll know all about it. But do read maybe the synopsis, because you'll get the sense of there's plenty of little twists and turns in this. But Rob, it's been brilliant having you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on Eat, Theatre, Sleep, Repeat.
Like, share and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode.